I think in my case, what happened was I was just so fiercely determined out of desperation that there was no question this thing couldn't work. It had to. I had my back against the wall. I mean, there was nothing else
Yeah.
that I wanted to do. And focus. You know, when people start running down rabbit holes in terms of what they're trying to put together, it's very threatening to the outcome. You've got to keep focused. I'd always use that analogy of my own businesses, you know. So the propeller could be revenue, but at at the end of the day, uh, you it's a lonely place. When that propeller is off, who do you turn to? There's no community of entrepreneurs where you can pop in after work and say, "Ah, guys, I'm getting a beating. My revenue's collapsed, or this unforeseen cost. Microsoft just tripled our bill like they did to us at one stage. And suddenly got this major cost you haven't even accounted for or tried to recover from anybody, and you've got to deal with it. So those kind of challenges, the loneliness of it's almost like being I suppose, a general in an army or something. You're the only one, and
Yeah.
you're getting your butt kicked, and you've got to make a decision to try and turn it around. How the hell do you do it? Or you die, or you get captured, right? And it's those moments. Those are the hard ones. But you know what? Once you're through that fear stage, the fear factor of the loneliness, and you're able to work with it, you can literally go on to run anything because you can't be made to be scared anymore. You don't think of failure. It's not an option. Just don't think about it. It's just something you don't do. You just
Yeah.
don't do failure.
Welcome to the Freedom Experience Show. I'm your host, Jean Moncrieff, and we have Howard Blake, the co-founder of Bizval and Blake Digital Capital. Howard is the definition of a serial entrepreneur. You've successfully built, I'll let you talk about this, over 20 companies, I think, around the world, over 4 continents. And today we're going to talk about some of your challenges along that journey and some of the challenges that entrepreneurs are having to face to find their way to this freedom that we all look for. So welcome, Howard. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Sean. It's good to be with you.
How did you get to where you are now? The show is about entrepreneurial journeys. And how did you find your way to running 20 plus companies across 4 continents?
Jean, it's obviously it's a long story, so we won't bore people with the length of it. But uh, at the start of the journey, I come from a legal background, so I was employed at a firm of attorneys, and um, I, we came to a mutual agreement that I was going to move on, and ended up being unemployed. Um, and that's really how it started. So I wasn't the entrepreneur who had like a light bulb moment and then suddenly started building a business plan and found a funder, and off I went. I was unemployed with 2 children,
Gotcha.
and
Yeah.
I didn't want to carry on in law because you have 2 hands and 18 hours if you're a super person, and that's what you can bill. That those are your billable hours, and that's where you land up. I had interest in technology. Bear in mind, it's 1990. There wasn't much technology around, but it was definitely the start. There were such things as
So it was the
laptops.
very early 90s.
Yes, very, very
Yeah.
early. 1990, bang on the nail. It happened in 1990. And then a friend of mine had a clothing factory and said to me, I've got overruns. Do you want to sell them? Shirts. And that's how I started out. You know, I was selling shirts out of a boot of a motor car as a lawyer, adamant I wasn't going back to the
Wow.
profession. And
So there was this element of determination there. And I think I read something about you with a banged up typewriter or scooter, or a typewriter and a banged up
yeah,
scooter as well.
yeah.
Real determination.
So from the shirts, we started, I used my qualifications, and we started helping people manage accounts receivables. And that's
Okay.
really where the whole journey kicked off in earnest. Started doing that. That's where the scooter and the typewriter came in. We used to type up all the processes on the typewriter in the kitchen and then go and serve them on people personally. And we got a reputation for being able to manage those accounts receivable on a very personal basis and get the money. But the scooter was hilarious. I mean, it was literally a little red scooter. Just to ride around, knock on doors and collect. And
And you come from or you enjoy motocross and motor racing, if I'm not
yes,
mistaken,
that's
as well.
right.
Got this vision of you on the scooter.
Riding the scooter was just fun, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then from there, realized that there was a massive opportunity that sat within in law where it was extremely expensive to issue process, and you would compound the debts and compound the problem because the debtor still had virtually no way of repaying you, but you'd spend $1,000 in legal fees, and then
Trying
with
to.
a $300 debt, and suddenly it's a $1,300 debt with costs added to it. So we wrote a system with the help of a friend in the early days, just merge files, where we would merge the information and we issued summonses. I mean, at the peak of it, we were doing 1 million summonses a month, which was unbelievable. It was
And were
wild.
those all on the typewriter back then? Would you
By now we had a
did you move?
printer. The typewriter got retired. I died of writer's cramp, I think, on that typewriter, the amount of work we were churning out. And then from there it morphed into, well, wouldn't you be prepared to phone these guys on our behalf? And so we did that, and the call center started, which we sold last year, 3,000 people in a call center from nothing, you know. So
So from
I,
the, from
I
that
think
scooter and the typewriter to 3,000 people in
yeah,
the
and
call
it's a
center.
discussion I often have with entrepreneurs, and I feel very sorry for entrepreneurs who funded because I don't think they're quite as agile as those who bootstrapped and
Yeah.
hustling along with their own money and bootlegging it up or bootlacing it up, and that definitely gives you an edge. And I think if you look at the funded successes to the bootstrap successes, you'll find that it's heavily weighted on the side of the bootstrap guys because you just manage your expenses so much more effectively. And well, you often spend money you don't have, but you do it in such a way you can keep going. I think in the funding round, you go series A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then they tell you no more. And you go, oh, okay, I better go do
Yes.
something else, right? So,
Gotta go and make some money or do something else.
yeah, so none of our ventures were ever funded. We just never had access to it. So that was great. I mean, it really made us agile. And what we did is when we had the call center and the legal services business, we then ended up getting into customer service side of it. And I was really interested in the tech, and we had 60 developers, and we would develop this tech. So we wrote behavioral algorithms that would predict when people were going to honor their debts, and that then became something of extreme interest to people who are lending money because if you understood why it went bad, how much better to incorporate why it went bad into not repeating the error on the credit scorecard side right at the start of the relationship. So we got dragged into that. And then for many years, we were really, helping banks, big retailers who offered in-store credit, insurance companies, anybody where there was an accounts receivable situation to manage that through this behavioral prediction software. Now, if you go back to when we wrote it, it was written on Microsoft Access in the early
Yeah.
90s, and it would take us for one of our big retailers, the equivalent of a Marks and Spencer, you'd notice Woolworths.
Yeah.
We would run their debtors profiles for them. It would take us 90 hours to run that program by postal code and sort, and we would build by postal code high risk lending areas and start building business intelligence based off behavioral economics. So um, and we modified that software a number of times in the business and built a lot of product off it. Because there's nothing worse than being in a service. I mean, you can be an entrepreneur like I was. I started out in the services industry. It's deadbeat because you can render services, but it depends how many people you employ and how long they work as to how
Yeah.
many services you get to render. And if you can't productize it, it
You can't scale it
yeah,
effectively.
it's like a firm of
Yeah.
lawyers or accountants or whatever. They're
Yeah.
just services, and they're very difficult to sell because they're indefinite period contracts terminable on 30-day notice. And no, who wants those? You buy the business today, to the contract's cancelled tomorrow morning, and you're done.
And you're not, yeah, it's not worth
Exactly.
it anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it was a huge push for us to productize, which we managed to do. So those are some of the companies you mentioned that we started. We had a software company. We took the behavioral algorithm and convert it into the real estate business so we could predict when people were going to sell property, because often, well, it's impossible to know when I'm going to sell my house unless I phone you and tell you. And
Yeah.
we're an algorithm that picked up age, number of dependents, where you were in life, and we'd
And you
call
could
you with
actually predict when somebody was going to
exactly. And
put
what
that
we do is
property
just
on.
call in from the call center and say we'd like to offer you a valuation on your property, and they say, how do you know I'm selling? It's weird. And we'd say, no, we don't know you're selling, but we're just offering a valuation. I said, well, can you do a sole agency to sell the property first? And, we weren't estate agents, but we very quickly networked with estate agents and showed them the power of the software, and that's a successful business running today. I think it's got about 20,000 estate agents and realtors on the books. And at the moment, I think it's going into Europe. When I last checked, because it
Okay.
got sold with a contact center, it was all part of it. And continues to offer services based on the algorithm written in the early 90s. I think it's just anything entrepreneurial. It's the time. People ask me, what is it? You got to be, of course, you got to be determined, but you also got to be prepared to slug it out and don't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, even when you think you're losing, you got to keep playing.
You're kind of getting up every morning and getting into the ring.
Yes, yes.
You don't know where the next punch is coming from.
No, you don't. I mean, we went through
You get better at
cycles
taking them.
in our 35 years where the sales team were just outright useless and didn't produce what they had to. But by the time you get on top of that, 2, 3, 4, 5 months have gone past, and then the revenue's hitting a plateau. Now, any revenue that gets in the flat line means that the expenses catch up, and soon it's a loss, and then it's a problem, and then you need money. So,
Yeah.
yeah, those were
So
kind
you've
of
hit some of those plateaus along the journey.
linty,
I mean,
linty.
it sounds like this one was sales and marketing related, but
We've had sales and marketing. We've had uh, big international clients go into liquidation. That's a shocker, because your last invoice generally doesn't get paid. It ends up being a creditor, in the
yeah,
insolvency. Those are particularly hard, and you still carry all the wages and the staff for a period
yeah,
until you can unwind the workforce. So yeah, there's countless challenges, and I think when you distill them down, it doesn't matter what business you're in; they're all pretty similar. If you're producing a product and someone cancels you, if you're supplying bumpers to the Toyota car motor corporation and they stop buying your bumpers, it's a very similar kind of a thing. So I think that's also one of the things is being able to have that agility, and I know that anyone who's heavily geared will get carried out because you can't carry the gearing in a down. One thing about gearing is you've got to keep growing that business extremely aggressively to afford it.
yeah.
And that's why funded startups are, I mean, it's common knowledge. I pitched once in Silicon Valley to a fund, and they just said to us, we interview and we approve 10 to survive. We know that we geared for it. That's the way it works. And that's the reality, isn't it? A lot of them don't
Yeah,
make it. They're great ideas. There's nothing wrong with. I always say the longest distance is between the great idea and the income statement. That is to be the
very
longest
true.
walk in a desert ever.
Very true. Got a brilliant idea.
Yeah, everyone's
Okay,
got
let's
them.
see.
Everyone's got them
Yeah.
all the time. Just making it earn $1 is very difficult. Yeah, so
See,
that's kind of the journey, and that's where it went along. Of course, the business grew, and then we were rendering services, United States, Europe, Australia, obviously Africa, and yeah, that's on the contact center side.
that's how.
That's how everything came together.
So, an element of being an accidental entrepreneur, bootstrapping the business yourself. How did you consciously think about the growth, or were you how much planning went into where you're going, or did some of it just kind of fall into place for you?
Zero. That's
No planning.
absolutely nothing. So when people come to you with a 5-year business plan, look what I want to do, and there's spreadsheets with pivot tables and all those wonderful things, it just makes
Yeah,
me, I just gloss over, because you can't predict. You, but a youngster or someone that comes to you and says, "Look at this, got a product. look at my first year numbers, look at my second year numbers. If I'm able to do this, I'll be able to achieve that. Completely different story. So I think in my case, what happened was I was just so fiercely determined out of desperation that there was no question this thing couldn't work. It had to. I had my back against the wall. I mean, there was nothing else
Yeah.
that I wanted to do, and just went up and got. People miss this point. I think it's the revenue in any business is so critical. Revenue hides a multitude of sins, and it also, if the sins are well managed, it can make a fair amount of money. And I think what people misunderstand about entrepreneurs, I have a large circle of entrepreneurial colleagues, and none of them really set out to be a billionaire that I know. Nobody. It was about
Yeah.
it was about the concept that they had come up with, working and being accepted and growing in a market. I mean, very much like what we're doing in Biswell now. For me, the greatest gratification will be to see that the ubiquitous service globally, where people can go and get an accurate valuation on their business and have a true north and be able to grow their business, understanding value. That's something I never had. I never had that where I didn't understand the value of what I was building. I just kept my head down and just kept building it and pushing. And I always kind of, came from a background where, for me, the cash book is all that mattered. If there's more in the bank at the end of the month than there was at the start, something's right. And we'll work out.
Okay.
We kind of knew what we
Great.
were doing right. We were we were innovative. We were rendering services. So if we promised clients something by Wednesday, they got it on Tuesday afternoon. And we're
Right.
adamant
Yeah.
about that ethic, and that ethic kind of drove a lot of that growth because people could rely on you. It also helped coming from a professional background because I think people trust you a bit more and they listen more to what you say. We did a lot of design and supply on credit systems and credit management systems that go, but it's just hard work. It's just keep going at it and focus. When people start running down rabbit holes in terms of what they're trying to put together, it's very threatening to the outcome. You've got to keep
So
focused.
you had an idea of where you were going. You had
Yes.
maybe a sort of sense of purpose of where you're going, much like you do with Bisval now.
Mm.
You were following that sense of purpose, if I understand you correctly, but there wasn't this plan that had been architected in terms of the smaller details of
Mm.
how you're going to get there. It was, yeah,
Yeah, you kind of, and remember, I came from the service industry background, so you know very quickly whether your services are working or not. They either grow, they go, or they don't. You're either mandated or you're not. Simple. It's binary.
yeah,
Um, so it helped me in the fact that I saw how the clients were enjoying the service, the level of service and professionalism, and I knew how to recipe there. All I had to do was, get in front of more people, which is what we kind of ended up doing by 19. So we started in 1990. By 93, we had grown to about 50 people from nothing, from just me. Um, and then by 95, we were at 300. And so people were loving that service and the value it was bringing. And we were really the only people in our country that we were doing it at the level that we were doing it at with being able to tie professional services and technology and stuff together. So we were way ahead of our competitors where we'd end up being one of one. And then our big client said, we can't have this. We can't be dependent on you. And they started encouraging other
yeah.
people to come into the market, right? And
Okay.
and so that was 98 and onwards, the dilution started where there were four other competitors, which were actually put together by our own clients. They didn't want to be in that dependent. They encouraged these guys, come on, do it. Look how they do it. This is how they do it. I think in some cases, although we never did much about it, they were sharing our technology with people, trying to help them grow their businesses. And this is what they do. You need to do it. But you know what? It's flattering if people do that. It's great.
You start off with a typewriter and a scooter, you get to 50 people, you get to 350 people. As the owner of the business, the founder of the business, how did things start changing for you? And did you put in leadership teams and finding the right people. How did that kind of unfold as you went along?
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting question because um, a lot of people land up in that situation where their businesses grow to the point where A, they can't afford them. So you can't actually afford your own equity. You don't have you've grown this thing, and you might have brought in another shareholder or two, and then all of a sudden you couldn't afford to buy those shares back from that individual, but yet you've grown it. So you are sometimes a victim of your own success. And
Yes, yeah.
yeah, that's kind of what happened to us. So in 1995, one of the banks came to us and said, we absolutely love what you're doing, and we want to make a big push into the white goods space. And we want to take a stake in the 25% stake in this business. And we allowed that to happen, which set us off on a journey that I don't think I would have repeated because we landed up being with some of the world's major banks for a period of time, like 15 years, where the stake just got passed on. They sold it to each
Okay.
other, and we were just consenting parties. But so we couldn't buy the 25% back. We didn't have the money, and they knew it. So they traded the stake amongst the banks, and I think it was an inflection point because if we had said, no, look, we're not interested, we're very happy with what we've done, um, we would have been in a better position to hang on to our equity and done things a bit differently. But, again, you when you're growing something and you've got something good and a bank comes along, it's extremely flattering as an entrepreneur. A big bank walks through the door, investment banking team, they talk all the right jargon, it's very impressive. And the irony is, all I remember from our law was I just said to them, okay, it's fine. If you're going to contribute intellectually to the business, that must be warranted. And they refused. And every single bank refused to do that. And that should have been a red flag straight away to say, hang on a minute, you love the asset, but to what extent are you going to be involved in it? It's like a dog chasing a car. What do you do when you catch it? And it
Yeah,
happened
what do
to
you do
us, I
when you
think,
get,
three or
yeah.
four times in that journey where major banks, even listed European banks, came in, loved the technology, loved the energy, and then acquired the stake and didn't really know what to do with it. Only one crowd came along and actually contributed. The rest of them, they were all going to contribute by giving us work and do new product design, but only one ever delivered.
Actually came in and said, okay, let's do something.
Yeah, which is a problem. So, but you know what? It's taught me other things. I mean, later on in life, when people come with M&A and stuff like that, you just learn to navigate a lot differently. But once you sold a stake to an outside shareholder, the propensity for you to have to do deals down the line is going to grow unless you can buy the stake back.
Yeah. So you had to drive up the value of the business, drive the growth
Yeah,
to
yeah,
claw back what you'd sold.
exactly.
And
And we did. We did. I
was there
mean,
something that was there something that drove that decision at the time to actually take that? Was it simply like a better sort of ego or hey, international bank wants to get involved, or we could see using the money to grow the business, or how were you thinking when you took
well,
it?
originally what we had thought was that it was a Portuguese bank, and what we had thought is when they came in, they're going to give us, obviously you're marketing your business. You know that in a contact center, for example, you might be growing at 50 to 100 seats a year. These guys come along and they need 300 day one.
Mm,
It's accelerated growth, right?
yeah.
None of them
So
really
you've
ever
had this
delivered, but
massive sudden.
doesn't matter. That's the psyche is how long is it going to take me to get to that point? And if I've got this partner and we get there, we might be attractive. Suddenly all the banks are going to want to be involved. It's like that FOMO. Oh,
Yeah.
they've got this like they've taken this minority stake in this like really entrepreneurial business that's full of technology. We if we don't get involved, are we going to be left out? Or are we missing something? I think in the C-suite, there's a lot of they watch a lot of growth and development in areas that they think they're going to get value out of. They very seldom are able to convert that value out of acquired assets because when an entrepreneur starts it, you've got like a fire that burns in you, and they haven't got the fire, right? So
Yeah, they
they're
haven't.
going to manage it from a
It's a different
corporate
story.
perspective. Yeah, they're going to manage it from EBITDA and all those kind
Yeah.
of good things. When as an entrepreneur, you say to yourself, we're going to go without profits for the next 6 months because we know what we're on to. We're going to put a bit of money into it, and then we'll double up on the other side. They can't think like that. It just cannot happen.
Did you have partners aside from the bank? So yourself and anybody else involved in the business, or was it just you?
At the start, it was just myself, and then I took a partner on from Germany who really I just couldn't run. When you got to 50 people, I just couldn't run it. It was just, I was out selling, and I had to make sure
Yeah.
that what was the engine room was running and running properly in my absence. So I took that partner on. He subsequently got himself into a bit of financial difficulty and put his shares up for sale, and one of the banks came along and bought
Took
him.
those.
So that was Barclays PLC. They came in, but so you kind of land up putting yourself in a position where you don't expect that to happen, but it does happen. Then what do? Or your partner
Yeah.
dies, or they emigrate, or I don't know. There could be a million variations there. How the hell do you now find somebody to come in if they need the money and work with you, and who are you going to land up with? Because they could land up driving you nuts. So our counter to that was we always made sure we had negative control in the shareholders agreement. So
Okay.
notwithstanding the shareholding, I always had the equivalent of 51%, although I never had 51%, but I always had the equivalent of 51% control over the
Okay.
business.
Gotcha.
And that was great
Yeah.
because it was as if I owned the whole thing anyway, but I had this bigger bigger balance sheet sitting next to me that allowed us to leverage a couple of things. But I must say the experience is that very seldom do you get anywhere near that balance sheet unless you come up with some cracker idea that needs big funding. And then it's ticket size. And if the tickets are too small, no one's interested. Under $20 million, everyone yawns. Small cap, it's inconvenient, it's
Yeah.
rubbish. Don't want it. When you go past 20 million, you get a bit of interest. And everything starts at $200 million. That's where the game really starts. And we were never big enough to get into that space. But yeah, and we also didn't want to be geared. We didn't want to get, you know, the minute you start attracting funding into the business, there's ratcheting agreements and all those things start happening where you can lose control of your own business, and you can end up walking out the back door without a
After,
cent, without a share.
so you've got this business that's grown very nicely. You effectively have 51% control, although you're not holding 50% of the equity. You,
Mm.
you have that veto right, I guess. And you've taken on a partner who's got into difficulty. Another bank's come in and bought them. It, it did you obviously went and clawed back the the shares from the bank somewhere along the line. But there's this theme of kind of over dependence or dependence going on. So at one point the industry is very dependent on you. Then the business must be pretty dependent on you, Howard. How did you start to overcome that as Howard as this thing scaled? Because taking on 300 new people, and I imagine that happened more than once as you took on bigger clients.
Yeah.
How did you start thinking about where this not that it is, but where this monster's going and
Yeah,
feeding
so
the beast? And
very early on, my first hire was my CFO, who stayed with me for all 30 odd years that the business was there. That was a critical hire because it wasn't so much the skill set that he brought, it's that we worked together very well. We understood each other and we complemented each
okay,
other. So I could sell and I could land the clients, and he could make it profitable and make sure the operation ran correctly. So we split the business. I did um, all the business origination, held all the relationships, would take the tech that we're testing and go and show it and show people how it improves and at the end of the day, you've got to do something cheaper and give people a bigger return. You can't lose. You can't. It's impossible
yeah,
because they'll always go for it. That's the formula we just kept going on. So he ran the office for me, and I helped him build that team. In 2013, I brought on my replacement. Uh,
okay,
I read a Harvard Business Review article that said if you haven't found your replacement by 50, you have a problem. I was
So
50.
what were you, 50 was that
A big inflection point. I better sign this guy up. I'm 50. I don't know what's in 50, but anyway, it's 50. That's what HBR said, and I used to subscribe, and I really enjoyed some of the articles, and that one resonated. And I chatted to my partner at the time, the CFO, and said to him, Mike, I think we better start onboarding. It's 50. We've always agreed, based on the article, at 50, we'd start getting people to come and help. And we put a CEO in place. Took us about 3 to 4, 5 years just to get him up to speed.
okay?
And that,
There's this
in
big
essence,
transition.
allowed us to exit because we got to a point where, through some of the bank shareholding, we landed up with some shareholders we didn't really get on with, and I just
Okay.
made a call that it was time to go, and there were other things to do. Yeah, and that's when we decided to leave, and the shares went on the market, and the process was handled, and we found a buyer, and off we went. But yeah, I think I do think a lot of times, and I know other entrepreneurs I was at school with who've gone on different journeys. I've seen the mistakes that they've made in the sense that they try and hang on to every aspect of the business and run it, and you can't.
Yeah.
You physically, it gets to a point where you won't even kill yourself. You just can't do it. It's physically impossible. So I can remember when we had 800 employees, there was another inflection point. At 800, things get crazy. You're so removed, you start getting so removed from everything. Whereas you used to be on the floor every day and hustling and checking and playing an active role. You've now got management layers in place that are reporting back to you on your KPIs and your formulas. And so you can just make sure that the business is obviously profitable and that the projects are running correctly. And then you land up being in a kind of a role where you call on your clients, you get reports from your management team, you take your reports, or you call on the clients, or the clients call you, and you go and problem solve with them. But you're not physically doing the work anymore. And I think that's quite
Yeah.
a, for a lot of people, it's a very difficult transition, and some people never get to make it. They hold their businesses deliberately at the size where they can control everything.
You almost need to make that conscious decision that you're either going to kind of cross that no man's land and build something that is an enterprise or a serious business, or you're going to stay at this boutique level or
Yeah.
this lifestyle size business.
So that's the example I always use with shareholders. I say to them, we need to put our foot down on the gas, and we need to either stay boutique and take your foot off the gas, or you need to keep this thing growing. And when you take that decision to keep growing, I don't think you physically realize at what extent you have to keep it going. Because when you get to a staff complement of 2,000 or 1,500, very different game. You
Yeah.
actually can't afford to let, so if you lost mandate, you can't actually afford to walk 500 people out of a door because the mandate's gone. You carry the arbitrage on the wage departure, on the payroll departure for maybe 3 months after that. So
Yeah. You can't afford it.
yeah,
It's
you
going to kill you.
can't. No, it'll take you out. So that's where you start playing some really tricky games, and then the what people don't realize is how important that sales team is. The people that
Yeah.
go out and build your revenue stack, if they aren't the best that you can get, you're gonna get hurt along the way somewhere, and that's something you got to spend on. It's like going motor racing, and you're happy just to put a standard
Stand
road car motor in your car and have a go. It's never going to
and
happen.
the standard brakes on.
Yeah, it's just never, nothing's going to work. So yeah, I think that's also something that's incredibly important. Once you roll that dice, you have to be prepared to run the distance, and you have to have the mindset to be able to grow. And that's where you look at any of the big corporations that shoot the lights out. They got incredible sales teams and
And
customer
marketing
acquisition
teams.
processes. I mean,
Yeah.
like Salesforce is one. I mean, they're just so tenured, and they've got that down to a fine art, and they do it.
I see this so often, and you make such a good point here that one of the key systems that business owners have to work on is the sales and the sales and marketing side of the business, keeping that consistent flow of new business coming in, and without them, so that it's not reliant on them doing all the sales and all the marketing around
Yeah.
the growth,
So as a business
because you can't
owner
go away otherwise.
or a founder, if you aren't intently in control of that funnel, good luck.
Yeah,
Good luck, because you're going to need luck. Because at the end of it, you have to make sure that what fills the funnel, at what rate does the funnel convert? Because I can fill it as much as I want, but nothing converts. It's not a,
it's
from
a
when I
problem.
put it in the
Big
top,
problem. Yeah,
what pours through that little spout at the bottom in terms of revenue and profit? Because the other part of it is that a desperate sales team will also land up bringing you stuff that doesn't make money, but they think they're fulfilling mandate. But I landed to do
yeah,
it. It doesn't make sense. We can't afford to do it. So, I think that for me, if I look back, and remember I was selling services, but I don't think it makes really any difference. We had some products. It doesn't make any difference whether it's a product or not. If you haven't got um, channels through which you can fill that funnel and convert that funnel into revenue, you're going to have a problem.
yeah. It's one of those fundamental things you got to, like we were talking about, making sure the business isn't over reliant on you, but making sure you've got that sales and that marketing system that's going to fill the pipeline and turn into real deals for you.
Yeah.
So you've have you exited the sort of bulk of the businesses and moved on to focus on Bisbal and Blake Digital Capital now? Is that where you are at the moment?
At the moment, I have three other businesses, including Bizvel. We also, so we finance technology in the food space. So in food production,
Okay.
they use very high-tech optics to make sure that people aren't putting anything unwarranted into the processed food that you're producing here.
Okay.
So that security side, that side, we have an interest in. Well, that I own on my own completely. Um, so we have that, and then we have a loans business that does basically just pure business to business loans in terms of growth
Okay.
capital loans and things like that. And then we have the interest that we have in Bisvel, but Bisvel is my passion. The other two are great, but as far as I'm concerned, Bisvel is everything I wished I had.
So
Uh,
let's talk about that. What is it that you wished you had all those years ago, which is Bisbal today?
yeah,
And
there's, I don't know, I often say to my colleagues, being an entrepreneur, being a founder is the loneliest thing in the world, and people don't understand it. And that's why I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't stay married very long. Um, or if they do, they've got to have a very special partner who understands entrepreneurial cycles. I think being an entrepreneur puts a lot of pressure on relationships, and because you're so
yeah,
focused, if they don't understand that focus is like a pilot explained it to me. It was the best analogy I ever heard. He said, "Do you know what the propeller is on an aeroplane?" I said, "The propeller." He said, "No, no, it's the fan that keeps the pilot cool. Switch it off and watch him sweat." And I always remembered that. I'd always use that analogy in my own businesses. So the propeller could be revenue, but at at the end of the day, uh, you it's a lonely place when that propeller is off. Who do you turn to? There's no community of entrepreneurs where you can pop in after work and say, "Ah, guys, I'm getting a beating, my revenue's collapsed, or this unforeseen cost. Microsoft just tripled our bill like they did to us at one stage, and suddenly got this major cost you haven't even accounted for, or try to recover from anybody, and you've got to deal with it." So those kind of challenges, the loneliness of it's almost like being I suppose, a general in an army or something. You're the only one, and you're getting
yeah.
you're getting your butt kicked, and you've got to make a decision to try and turn it around. How the hell do you do it? Or you die, or you get captured, right? And it's those moments. Those are the hard ones. But you know what? Once you're through that fear stage, the fear factor of the loneliness, and you're able to work with it, you can literally go on to run anything because you can't be made to be scared anymore. You don't think of failure. It's not an option. Just don't think about it. just something you don't do. You just
Yeah.
don't do failure, right? So, and I think that's what really keeps you going. And for me, if I had just had a Biswell type product to help me understand the value of what I was building and to build it a bit smarter and to give it direction into so what did I want to, and I mean people have all different objectives. Are you building a business that needs to produce a strong dividend stream for the benefit of a family? Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Generational wealth or generational opportunity, some people might want that, and you keep it going, and that's why you're building it. Other people might be building it to exit. Other people might be building a boutique that just funds a lifestyle. I've had a friend who had one of the biggest roofing businesses in this area who just got to 60 and just closed it. So I'm just tired.
That was
I said, why don't you
shut it
sell it?
up.
No, I'm not doing no, just close it.
Totally.
So, everyone's got a different manner, but if someone had sat me down and said, how about these options? These are your options. Do you want to bring an investor in? Do you want to exit the business? At what point do you think you'd like to? What are your exit triggers? Talk to me about what triggers an exit for you. Never ever thought about it. Just kept pushing and pushing until one day I was too tired and said I wanted to go. So,
Do you think that's because of a lack of information out there, or do you think it's in part because entrepreneurs are just so focused on kind of payroll at the end of the month that they don't have the time to look up? How do you change that? Because as you said, you'd love to have had that something like Bill's Wealth 30 years ago
mm,
when you're sort of on the scooter and with the typewriter and thinking about what your intention is for where you're taking the business. But I feel like it takes a few bangs until we finally
yeah,
wake up and say,
I would do.
I need to figure this out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's definitely the case. And people don't, I mean, different events happen in life that trigger different responses. And it can be, it can be health. It could be turn down in the economy. It could be an accelerating economy where you're absolutely burning yourself out to keep up with the growth in your own business. And some of the skills that you hire don't turn out to deliver according to expectation. That's also a huge risk. Yeah, you
yeah,
hand at heart, you believe this person coming along is going to solve my problem, and they don't, they compound it. I've had a few of those. So, um,
mm,
I think for me, what Biswell does, and if I'd had a Biswell, it would have educated me on the value of what I've built, and it would have set for me a true north in terms of my trajectory or my heading that I wanted to follow to get to my destination. I didn't know what my destination was. No idea. Nothing. Never contemplated it. So
gotcha. Yeah,
until certain life events happen, you think, oh, do I really need this? Or I need to move on. Things, different shareholders come along. I don't like them. Let's move on. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is, but people aren't prepared. People are not prepared. And I'll tell you what, the investment banker walks through your office door at 4 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon and says, I'm interested in your business. Get knocked over with a feather. You never thought about it. It's a
yeah,
process I've been contemplated. But if I'd had a Biswell process where I had my true north, I could have sat down and engaged with that person in a very strategic discussion, as opposed to just being a deer in the headlights. Big moment.
yeah.
Wow, these guys are interested in us. Can you believe it? So I think,
And
and it
actually,
comes at you a lot
yeah,
of times during your life when, if you, especially been an entrepreneur for decades, you'll get a lot of offers. You'll get a lot of people. People love to own things that they can't build themselves. It's weird. Um, how often do you walk into a house and think, oh, I'd love to own this, but I could never have
yes,
designed it, right? But now that I see it,
exactly.
it's really cool, and I think I'd really like to have it. So, and I think being an entrepreneur is such a complex thing. There are so many things that are hitting you at a personal level, financial. Just think of personal, financial, it's your time. What people imagine an entrepreneur to be is the guy sitting in the back of a Gulfstream 700, and it's just
Yeah,
not that. There's so few of them. And meanwhile, you're bashing it out. And, my first wife used to get so angry with me because my clients would phone me at anything from 7 till 2 in the morning because we were trading foreign hours.
sort of 24/7, or
Oh, we
yeah,
haven't got a life and can't carry on like this. And it's true, but that's it. I don't know how to do it any differently, and I can't tell clients not to phone me because then the contract ain't there, and then things aren't happening. It's just it really, so you get personal challenges, you get financial challenges, you get structural challenges in the business where have you got the right people affecting the right task so that you don't have the pressure of having to go and fix all the time. And you become very good at managing. It's like a sort of ringmaster in a circus. You got to manage all
Yeah.
the acts and make sure they're all on time and working properly so that people are entertained. And businesses aren't really different to that. I think there's a lot of moving parts that require attention. I think that's often the reluctance to grow is that fear of, oh my God, am I going to lose my whole life? You know, I'm not going to be able to go sailing on Saturday afternoon, or I might not make my kids' school play because my clients suddenly arrived and they're demanding time. You know, so there are sacrifices. It's not a, it's definitely not an easy space, but it's very rewarding. The reward is that the idea that you conceptualized comes to fruition and you can see it
Yeah.
and it
And you can see it
works.
come through on the income statement.
Yes, and it starts gaining market traction. You can start seeing it being
Yeah.
relevant and accepted, and that's priceless. Priceless.
And the overall vision for BizVal now, so you have from what I feel, this real sense of purpose to help entrepreneurs. What's the big vision for BizVal over the next few years?
Right now, we're only 2 years old from inception. So from when we started the journey in terms of getting the code written and all the stuff for the algorithms that run that valuation process. So it's very early days for us, and we've been through quite a journey already in terms of um, how do we get this into the global market, which is starting to happen now. We're seeing a lot of traction. In actual fact, there's
Congratulations.
for
Yeah.
the first time now, there's more revenue on the income statement from foreign entities than there are locally, which is exactly what we wanted. And
Fantastic. That's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think seeing the market take it up and seeing so it's not so much the individual entrepreneurs. We get a fair amount of those who come through and curious about valuation. But in order for you to run and be part of that process, you have to understand value. If
Yeah.
I don't understand value, why would I use it? No point. And if you understand value and you've ever gone to one of the big four or even tier two accounting firms and seen what the quote looks like, that's the last time you ever asked for a valuation because you
Okay.
can't afford it.
Valuation.
You can't afford it. It's just like it's a non-essential item. It's going to satisfy my curiosity. Very different if I have to do it to go raise a trade fund or have to go raise money to run my business. That's very different. But if I haven't got that requirement, the curiosity costs me a small fortune. And what's the value proposition? There's not
Yeah.
really a value proposition unless you're trying to exit a partner or bring somebody in or raise cash. So, and I was having this chat with Graham this morning and just saying to him, you must understanding from an entrepreneur, understanding the value of their businesses is probably one of the last things they contemplate. They don't wake up every morning thinking, wonder what my business is worth. I don't think so. So but we hoping by the service that we're able to bring at the price point we can bring it, it's infinitely affordable, it's extremely accurate, and people are able to use it. They're able to use it very constructively to build a business, exit partners, or just to understand the value. Just understand the value.
Yeah.
A lot of folk come along and we say to them, look, there's your value, but your business is not saleable because you got no, unfortunately, you haven't built succession. So should we put a succession project together
Plan
for
in
you? Let's go and
project.
hire.
Yeah.
Oh, do you mean that I'm going to be unemployed? I said, only if you want to. I mean, if you hire help, I always try to hire people smarter than me because they really lift you up, you know. So if you get someone
Love
a lot
that. Yeah.
smarter than you are, they push you higher up the pyramid.
Yes.
So
Surround yourself with the people that are smarter than you.
yeah,
One
and
of those
you
small
might
ladies.
even
Yeah.
pay them more than you pay yourself, but it's worth it. Go for the
Because
ride.
it's the value, the equity that you hold in the business. So if you're growing it toward that valuation, and so you folks are putting accurate valuations in the
Yes,
reach of entrepreneurs, objective, accurate valuations, and coaches and folks like myself are able to take those valuations and build them into the plans that we're working with. So it's not just about what's the revenue, how much money's in the bank, what's the sort of profit, we can now say what's the target equity
Yeah,
valuation as well, what's the gap, and that helps them to filter their decisions. So do I buy the yacht or do I reinvest in the
exactly.
tech to take me toward that equity
Yes.
valuation?
Or I might
Love
need
it.
to, you know what? I might need to employ. Um, I'm doing one right at the moment. Massive organization, digital auction in the digital auction space, and we're busy putting the CEO's replacement in. Why? He's 63 and he wants to go. How are you going to do it? There's no one to step in. So we're grooming the next. We've gone out to the market to find the best possible person to put in that place to make it happen. Um, so I think, yeah, that's where BizVal is so unique because you don't have to sell a kidney to get the valuation
To
done.
get your valuation.
um,
Or
what
two.
we do, what we do find is the business owners and the entrepreneurs. It's like when you go through it with them, it switches lights on. Oh wow,
Yeah.
options they never contemplate, never. Oh, wow. So I could do that, yes. And if you had proper succession in place, you could also go on holiday and still bank the dividend. How's that? Oh, wow, okay, yeah, no, I get that. And then does that mean one day I could exit? Yes. Wow, okay, right. Now I'm on a different trajectory because if I was just curious, and all of a sudden you've helped me to understand on a formal process that this is where I am, suddenly the
Yeah.
sun rises and there's a landscape in front of you. And you can choose whatever you want out the landscape. And the really interesting thing is, John, is that we've got now really empirical data. We've had companies come to us and we valued them, and they've sold smack in the price range of the valuation. So the one thing we were really at the start of it, really passionate about is we don't want to build fake value. We don't. We don't
Yeah.
want people to think that their assets are worth so much more, only to be told when they apply for finance, sorry, we can't loan you, or we can loan you a third because your value is much lower than what you think it is. And we wanted to keep it really realistic and be able to benchmark it correctly, and we have. Our track record is really unbelievable when we look at accuracy evaluation. So we've had some come on the books, we valued them and they've sold. They've actually, we don't sell them. They've gone
And
and sold their business and it's banging, bang on.
oh,
One was bang on to the dollar.
wow.
Exactly there. And
And
that's
I
so
bet that as
rewarding
this
because
grows,
it's accuracy,
it just gets,
data,
yeah,
accuracy.
more accurate.
I love
Yeah.
data and you can't argue it. Once it's accurate, it's accurate. And yeah,
Yeah.
you might not like that valuation as a business owner because you think you're worth 10 times more. It's fine. I mean, the startup space is that nightmare, right? I mean, the guy's hardly got an income statement and he thinks he's riding a unicorn, but he ain't. Because you're on Series D and everyone's getting
Every,
grumpy.
and everybody's got the unicorn idea. It's
Exactly.
an idea until it's on the income statement,
And
isn't
I think,
it?
Silicon Valley drove that really hard at one
Yeah.
stage where, I don't know, you don't hear of specs anymore, these
No.
super clustered IPOs that they were doing, and you don't hear of unicorns anymore. And it's because people are coming a little bit more circumspect about how they invest their money and what they want back out of it. They're not taking a punt anymore. They're taking calculated uh, moves, which is a good place for the market to be. It's realistic, right? And that's what you want.
Yeah.
You want
That's
realism.
right. And I'm conscious of the time, so I don't want to stretch you over, but what's some resource or something that you're reading at the moment that you're really enjoying it? Do you listen to podcasts? Are you reading anything that's really interesting at the moment?
And I'm absolutely terrible. I've never read anybody else's stories about how good and wonderful they are because I think by the time it's edited and it reaches your hands, it's been severely editorialized for sale. I draw a lot of my interest from Rory Sutherland. So, he's a behavioral psychologist guy from Ogilvy. I love behavioral
Okay.
psychology now, and I love because that's my background in terms of how we position data and how we use data. So at one stage we had a database of over 70 million records, and we had public Wi-Fi, And we weren't interested in who was using the public Wi-Fi. We were interested in the behavioral trending that came out of it. And we did free public Wi-Fi all over the world. People logged in, and we just built data sets out of it. Very much like, we used to work for the biggest dating agency in America, and it's got nothing to do with dating. It's just about data.
Just
They're
about
able
data,
to
yeah.
profile almost anything for a retailer off the dating data. And
So that was Rory Sutherland, was it?
Sutherland, yes, he's vice
Okay,
chairman of Ogilvy
Ogilvy.
Group. Yeah, um, incredible, incredible. You know what? He talks about so many things that resonate with me because of what I've done and the areas that I've been involved in. And he's inspirational. I also have an interest in history, so enjoy Yuval Hariri, the the historian. I did half my PhD in philosophy and never made it because I got so damn busy in the business. So, I have an interest in some sort of amateur philosophy stuff and that. So yeah, really not interested in other people's success other than having navigated my own, and
Yeah.
I've never liquidated a business or really closed it except for one, that the government closed us down. So there's nothing I can do. They legislated against us. We had long before couriers, we had a door-to-door delivery service running, that competed directly with the post office, and they passed a piece of legislation that said no private individual, still
Jeez.
stands today, could deliver an envelope less than a meter by a meter. Now, I don't know, I've never seen a square meter envelope in my life, but they managed to. But we actually repositioned the business and did something different with it. We didn't really have to close it. We just repurposed it and used the infrastructure we had for something else. So yeah,
So it was just kind of reinvented and
it was
reuse what you had
reinvented.
and make sense,
So
yeah.
I wish I could tell you that Bill Gates was my hero or Elon Musk. I have great admiration for what they've achieved, but I really not that interested.
But I think sometimes that from reading different things or exploring different angles or different subjects, for entrepreneurs, that's a great thing. It kind of
It
opens up the
seeds,
mind to
definitely seeds you.
creativity.
Yeah, it seeds creativity. It seeds, everybody who's founding or starting or running a business that they built has to have a certain amount of inspiration, right? And you can draw that
Yeah,
inspiration
that's
from any source. I know one of the most definitive times in my life was when I had the opportunity to work in a professional race team with the cars that we were racing. And I took more out of that on the data side and the strategy and the way the team was managed back into my business than anything else I've ever been involved in my life. And, because we'd end up winning an endurance racing championship, which were events between 4 and 12 hours. And when you do
yeah,
endurance car racing like Le Mans this last weekend, you realize
yes,
how everything gets stretched. Much the same as in a business where every critical role player gets stretched beyond what they can really cope with. You have some 24-hour sessions and things like that. And watching the strategy of the race teams and what you have to do to be reasonably successful, because there's a very fine line between first place and 22nd. It's
yes.
hundredths of
There's like
seconds. It's
hundreds of seconds.
ridiculous. Yeah, it's like professional tennis, right? Everybody on that court
Yeah.
is unbelievable, and you just have good and bad days. So
It's funny
that,
you say that. Yeah, some of my best learnings have come from that, from racing as well. So,
yeah,
and watching the teams, unbelievable
and
the
it
kind of
tests you,
data,
tests
what
your,
they're looking at. Yeah,
endurance racing. It tests your ability to finish, because we used to do 2 hours. We used to do 2 hours 10 in each, unbroken stints. And you've got a concentration strategy on pit stops. Every time you put the motor car, you're going down the leaderboard. So
yeah.
we just fitted a massive fuel tank and calculated that if we ran for two
How
hours
much
and
you're going
ten
to use?
minutes, we had one pit stop in the 4 hour. We're guaranteed, because everyone had about 7 pit stops, right? We weren't the fastest guys on the track, but we won every one we entered. So
Strategy,
yeah, strategy, and also
differentiation.
choosing components that work, and
Yeah.
the simplest little things can cost you a victory. Exactly the same in a business. The simplest little things can be things that trip you up. Give you an example. Major corporations around the world use contact centers to do their customer service. frontline representation of customer. They take it to a subcontractor third party who hires the person for the least amount of money so they can get in the pricing parameter that the big company wants. And they're quite happy for that $2,000 a month person to represent their $1 billion brand. No problem.
Yeah,
It's weird.
it is weird. It just doesn't make sense. Cut the cost as much as you can and put
Yeah.
people who can't speak the language properly or whatever. I think I watched
We've
one
all
of your
had it.
videos about how you had to kind of work on negative tone or something
Yeah.
to make sure your call center agents
Yeah.
could talk to everybody globally. And it's
Yeah.
you don't realize the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes.
Accent neutralization, which, let's be honest, some jurisdictions don't get right, and you'll end up speaking to someone from the north of India, and you both can't understand each other, and everyone starts getting irritated. It's not that he's doing a bad job, and it's not that you're being unreasonable. It's just you can't communicate.
Customer experience is so important.
Everything. Customers come back on the CX and the UX. What is the user experience
Yes.
like? I mean, if it's not good,
Music.
you just don't go back, and you don't have to go back.
And then it
So
comes down to the employee who's getting frustrated as well. So you got the employee experience, the customer experience, UX, and you get those three things working well.
yeah, then
Power.
it's powerful. Get it wrong, it's so toxic.
Yeah.
Everyone loses.
So what if people want to reach out to you, Howard? What's the best kind of place to find you on LinkedIn? Reach out to you on
LinkedIn.
at BizVal?
Hit me up on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to do it, or through BizVal. I put a lot of effort, a lot of time into BizVal because it's something.
Yeah.
It's not often you get involved in a business that you believe in, and it's not often you get involved in a business that you feel you can give back something. Often you get to the end of your entrepreneurial life, and what do? You've got so much experience, and you don't share with other people. I'm not helping anybody to not make the mistakes I made. Quite happy to share that. I mean, it's priceless. It can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's priceless. So I work with a few companies. I advise, quite happy to advise and help people just chop them along and steer them. And often it's just how we need to book a session for I feel like sometimes I'm like the psychologist of business, where go sit on the couch and cry, and the problem solved. Like box of tissues. But it's just giving people a place to speak where it's hard for an entrepreneur. Your ego is tied up into what you're building. I can't, as an entrepreneur, I'm unlikely to go to someone I don't know and tell them, I think I'm messing this up, or I think I'm missing an opportunity, because people think I'm a bad entrepreneur, right? You don't want to be a bad entrepreneur or a loser. So where do you speak that it's safe? Where can you have those conversations without being judged, or that someone just says,
just being vulnerable?
Why don't you do this? Let's change the sales team. Let's replace that CFO.
Brilliant.
Let's get a better CIO. Your CIO's, still
that's
what
entrepreneurs
that's often
need.
all I do. I mean, to say to the guys, you need to tweak these three things, and then they call me back 3 months later, come back. Look what's happened, and that's rewarding, right?
It is. It's very rewarding.
I want everyone's businesses to succeed at the highest possible level. There'll be no unemployment in the world, because we're the biggest employers.
Entrepreneurs out there solving that problem. Yeah.
I mean, when I exited our business, I actually stopped counting in the call center and the technology space, but we had taken 60,000 within the first 20 years. We had taken over 60,000 unemployed school leavers and given them an opportunity.
Unbelievable.
Because
that's
those environments have got high staff churn, and it might be your first job, but you come in and you leave with Microsoft skills, all sorts of skills that you can go and take somewhere else. And kids that are motivated, they pick up their skills up, boy, and they're off to the next. And that's exactly what we want.
And they start up that career ladder, or go off and see what they've seen and start their own
I've had people stop me in the street and say to me, "Do you remember me?" I said, "No, I'm sorry, I don't." You took me on, you interviewed me and took me on in 1999.
Whatever it was.
And I'm now the CEO at Mitsubishi.
That's such great stories.
He said, you gave me such confidence. You were doing, where in South Africa could you ever get exposed to international work? You gave us, we became internationally relevant. I could speak to people from outside my country with confidence. And I got my
contact. Started my career on the call center.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Howard. I really
Jean,
appreciate your time and
anytime.
coming on the show, and it's been fantastic.